Yeah. Go.
And the first one she competed with the first one. And he was upset. She's weak. So just sympathize with
The glare's so nice.
and you'll find out why she was.
Hey. I want you to trust me, though. Ray told me so much about you. Nice to meet you. I'm the other.
I love it. I love it.
She just said you were 4 times.
I have it set up. It's on live video right now already. Because I was trying to play around with it, but it's fine.
He's awesome. I've got a man this. You can sit here with me. I'm down here by my lonesome. I'm down here. I just want to make sure I don't screw up while we're thinking right. He fixed it. The only issue was the lens was on. You gotta have the lens uncovered. Duh. Good to see you again. No, I'm not touching it. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Enter. I'm just going to leave it like it is. But you can sit here if you want to, because there ain't no one else in there. And we can check it. Do it right now. He's all boy over here.
I'll be here for another year.
I retired from there 3 years ago.
I'll be
I
retired.
love it.
Yeah, so I'll be retired. Everyone's like, oh, you're going to do more than 5 years. I'm not going
He's up there now.
Right? Oh, same stuff. Yeah, he's up there. He just finished his probably sooner.
Uh-oh. What are you doing? Y'all see each other.
What is it? Yeah. Her husband said yeah, and I'm going to
I got mine up for doing another one. I want to do one in June. End of June. Yeah. That's when they elect y'all. Oh, word, my God.
How you doing? Good to see you. Yes, sir. Please. Yes, sir.
I saw you at state. The loop? The loop. That's where I saw you. Okay. I looked at Sam Perry. You know Sam Perry. I think so. I don't see him either. But I see some good other folks. So that's good. I'm not sure I don't screw this camera up.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I just love it. You got maple syrup?
I'm going to use this shirt.
Hell up. Come on, ding dong dang brain.
I was there until I was the beach.
All right. You see the old man on the map? Is he still there?
No, it's all right. I'm like, hell no.
I got to quit cussing. I'm in a church. Idiot. Anyway, oh. It's still the state of this country.
Yeah. Hell.
Uh-oh.
So I don't even know Maryland, so I have to watch Massachusetts, I have to watch it on the screen, like the rest of the beyond, you know. Ooh la la. Bottom left on the left-hand side, I promise.
Bottom left on the left-hand side. Okay. Well, I got one of the new ones.
That's it. Yeah, thank you. And just leave it alone. Don't do nothing to it, right? Let it roll the entire. That's like technologically different generations. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And this
Judge and I will tell you the difference. Yeah. But DJ is great. Are you honest over there? Submit your own dorms and preferential, legislation stuff.
Yeah, so I got like a American school rights law. So, like how are you on Chicago school? I went to good school. Yeah, I got an experience.
Ray Charleston still there, the Red Russell.
Exactly. Yeah, we had a lot of people guys in there. Yeah. Guy, I didn't know it. I just stepped back in the door. Really?
Quito.
I was in Japanese well.
You see the anacondas? Or
no, we were in
Sasagawa.
We saw them. Doing like the stop.
Oh, yeah. Ecuador's beautiful.
Yeah, they usually just go
Got it.
So that was good.
You went through 22 more state tours. This is our mission. Our mission.
Yeah, it was good.
You did your talk later?
I did. And that was in a matter of, like 2 years, writing and writing.
Yes, you got all right.
That was helpful.
Okay.
If I could get everyone to take their seats, that'd be great. We're going to start the Oratorical contest. All right, good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2026 89th American Legion High School Oratorical Scholarship Program, a constitutional speech contest sponsored today by the Department of Georgia Commander Michael Schwartz. My name is Herschel Joshi. I'm a former Department of Georgia finalist contestant, voice stater, and currently a student at the University of Georgia, where I'm a UGA Foundation Fellow. I will serve as the MC for today's contest. In order to be fair to all the contestants at this time, please silence or turn off any electronic communication devices, phones, pagers, etc. No pictures or recording is allowed during the competition, except those specifically authorized by the contestant chair. If I could ask that you please rise and remain standing until Legionnaires uncovered. Today, Mr. Bob Sykes will lead us in our prayer.
Thank you. Let us pray. Our most benevolent God, we thank you for the freedom that we possess in this great country. Freedom to come together and share with these young men and women as they deliver their speeches which explore our Constitution. We ask, God, that you comfort the minds of each speaker and family member who is part of this contest, giving each the assurance that they are all winners here today. Remind each that through their search for excellence and their presence here today, they bring honor to you, the author of all freedom, to their sponsoring posts, to their families, and to themselves. We ask things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
please remain standing and uncovered. And I will ask our commander, Michael Schwartz, to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. I have a few remarks to make, basically to welcome you to this event. I am so delighted to see the people here to honor these contestants that have worked so hard to get to this level. I want to thank those in the posts, those of you that are from various posts, your commanders. We have district commanders, we have state people here today. Be sure to take back to your post that we appreciate the work you do. Every post that participates involves maybe 15 or 20 people just in what they're doing at a post level. That happens again at the district level, that happens at the area level, and then of course here it happens as well. And so we appreciate everyone's effort to get to this place, and we appreciate the fact that this is an important competition. You're in a competition that's been in place officially since 1938. Anyone here born in 1938? Come on, there must be some.
Not quite.
That looks old.
No.
Not me. Close. Not me.
No.
In any case, 39. There you go. We appreciate what they've done. Please go back and thank them. We try to do it, but it's just more significant when you do it. It takes so many people to put this in place, and sometimes we forget those at a post level. One of the important things today is that we have Judge Joe Bishop put this together. Joe does this very well, and Joe's been doing it for a number of years. This program falls under what we call Americanism. And Joe, I'm going to ask that you come up here now. I asked that he stay around. He didn't want that.
Here comes the judge.
Here comes the judge. And I just come over here. I just think this is important because of where it comes from. We try to honor all of our members, but in this case, the National Committee of Americanism in the American Legion, it's a national group, a commission, and a committee. I've been serving on the committee for a number of years. They have recognized Judge Bishop. And so here is from the American Legion National, a certificate of appreciation in recognition of outstanding service to the American Legion Education Program, Judge Joe Bishop. And it also goes on to say we appreciate his efforts towards National Americanism Commission and for your unwavering commitment to promoting the 4 pillars of the American Legion. And so on behalf of the American Legion nationally, I present you with this, and we always appreciate, and Joe is the greatest guy to work with. I'm going to give you a point. Our American Legion riders have always been big supporters of this program. This is coming from the riders, and I happen to be in the Army, so it says the Army on it too. Thank you so much. That being said, we're ready for the competition. Herschel's here. We really appreciate him stepping up to be able to do this. I said to Joe, let's get somebody young. And he said, that's not you. It's all right. Let's get somebody young. Herschel, if you will. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Seitz. This afternoon, 4 contestants start their quest for $68,000 in scholarships, which will be awarded at the National Contest Finals in Hillsdale, Michigan, at Hillsdale College the weekend of May 15th through 17th, 2026. In the 89th history of this contest, the American Legion has awarded over $3.75 million in scholarships. You'll notice the contestants are not in the auditorium at this time. During the competition portion of the contest, they will appear on the stage to deliver their respective orations. Again, in fairness to all contestants, I ask that you not applaud until the contest has been completed and the contestants are on stage for recognition and awards. Also, please do not leave or exit the auditorium while a contestant is speaking. Between contestants, the ushers will open the contest doors right here. Once the doors have been closed, there is to be no one entering or leaving the theater while a contestant is speaking. It should be obvious that our goal today is to limit as much interruption as possible while our contestants are speaking. I've been in their position before. It really helps to have a clear and easy auditorium to work with. Again, no picture taking or recording by anyone during the competition without specific permission from the contest chair. Doing so may result in your removal from the auditorium. Additionally, please do not disturb or call attention to the judges during the contest today. Our speakers today will be introduced by number only. Prompting in any manner is not permitted. Doing so may result in disqualification of the speaker. Each speaker is about to deliver an 8 to 10 minute prepared oration on some phase of the United States Constitution. The contestants are not allowed to use notes, a podium, or a sound system. The contestants will be shown a color and number time card at the 8, 9, and 10-minute mark of their oration. 8 is green, 9 is yellow, and 10 is red. If there is a violation of the time requirement or a penalty point for each minute or fraction thereof will be assessed against the contestants' totals. There will be a short pause between contestants to allow the judges time to mark their scorecards and ballots. Before introducing contestant number 4, I will ask for a member of the audience to draw the assigned topic from one of 4 provided envelopes, as you see right here. All contestants will speak for 3 to 5 minutes on that same subject. Contestant number 4 has spoken for 7 minutes on their prepared oration. Contestant number 1 will be taken to a private room, given the envelope containing the assigned topic card, and be allowed 5 minutes to prepare for their assigned topic presentation. I will read the assigned topic to you just before contestant number 1 is introduced. Are judges ready? Timekeepers ready? I will now call for contestant number 1. Contestant number 1, the title of his oration is A Time for Endurance. Contestant number 1.
Today, we are very politically divided. Some even claim we are more divided now than we have ever been. I would like to disagree and point out a few times in our history we've experienced division. I can start off with the Patriots versus the Loyalists, the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists, the North versus the South. These are all times throughout our history we have faced polarization. But through it all, we have endured thanks to the strength of our Constitution. On June of 1776, a delegate from Virginia named Richard Henry Lee proposed that the American colonies should be free and independent. On July 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress voted to officially declare independence from Great Britain. The day we all celebrate, July 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress officially adopted our Declaration of Independence. A little known fact, the original draft of the Declaration of Independence criticized slavery, but Southern representatives refused to sign the document until the criticism was removed. That's a perfect example of the polarization I just spoke of. I'd like to mention a man named John Locke. He created a couple of important theories. First was natural rights. He believed every human being was entitled to certain basic rights. he created three: life, liberty, and property. When Thomas Jefferson added them to the Declaration of Independence and later the Constitution, he adapted them to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. John Locke also created another theory we call the social contract theory. The idea he proposed was that people gave power to the government, and in exchange, the government had a duty to protect their basic natural rights. This is perfectly exemplified in our preamble. I mean, the first three words are "we the people." What a better way to show people's power over the government. The Constitution, this is not a well-known fact, was not our first form of government. Our first form of government was the Articles of Confederation. They were created during the American Revolution, and they reflected many of the colonists' fears of a tyrannical government. They created a few problems when they tried to limit the government, though. There was no executive branch, there was no federal courts, Congress had no power to tax, Congress could not establish a national currency, Congress could not regulate trade, and Congress had one chamber where each state got one vote. Eventually, all of these problems came to a boiling point. Each state was more like its own country than they were a union of 13 together. We decided we were going to change that. It started in 1786 when a man named Daniel Shea led 1,000 farmers in rebellion against the Massachusetts government. They weren't elites, they were ordinary people, they were farmers. Many of them were veterans of the American Revolution. They fought for freedom from Great Britain, but they felt the Articles of Confederation weren't an effective system of government. In 1787, we decided to hold a new constitutional convention. We figured we'll make some small changes. We'll make some small edits, revisions, and everything will be sunshine and rainbows again. Unfortunately, we realized that wasn't really going to work out. We had made too many mistakes. There was too many problems to just edit. It's like if you've ever made a cake and you forget an ingredient here or you add too much there. Eventually, when you mess up the cake batter enough, you have to throw it out and start again. That's what we did in 1788. We decided to create a whole new constitution. We started with some ideas from another political philosopher named Charles de Montesquieu. He created the idea of limited government. It's a really self-explanatory topic. The whole idea is that government should have limits. They didn't want a system like Great Britain where the power was unlimited, unchecked. We implemented this in our government by creating three branches: legislative, judicial, and executive. Each branch could check or limit the power of the others. Not only this, we also split power between the national and state governments. That was a great way to limit power to prevent one part of government from becoming too powerful. The main debate of that constitutional convention was how should we structure our legislative branch. There were two plans. First was the Virginia plan. They said the representation should be based on the population. New Jersey disagreed with it. New Jersey wanted equal representation, like how it was in the Articles of Confederation. This split the delegates. The larger states felt that they should have more power. They felt it was unjust for them to have a larger share of the population and not a larger say in government. The smaller states feared that their ideas could be overrun. They feared that they wouldn't have a voice in the government, that the larger states' votes would outweigh any input from them. Eventually, we endured division. We came to what we call the Great Compromise. We agreed to create two chambers of Congress. One of them, we call the House of Representatives, is based off the Virginia plan. The other, we call the Senate, is based off the New Jersey plan. But before this new Constitution could take effect, it had to be ratified by 9 of the 13 colonies. There was a slight issue. We had become, once again, divided and polarized. Two groups had split the United States: the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Federalists felt that they had created a perfectly good document. They felt that they had established a good government and fixed the problems in the Articles of Confederation. It's kind of like you've ever heard that saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That described how the Federalists felt. The Anti-Federalists, however, disagreed. They said that the new Constitution didn't properly protect people's basic rights, took away too much power from the states, and didn't address all the issues in the Articles of Confederation. Eventually, we once again had to come together to compromise, to endure our division. The deal we struck was the Anti-Federalists agreed to ratify the new Constitution. In exchange, the Federalists would add a Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments, to better protect people's basic human rights. Another point of division we'd like to mention would be the 3/5 compromise. Unfortunately, we didn't come up with a lasting solution. The problem was we were debating how slaves should be counted as part of the population and thus the votes. We agreed to count each slave as 3/5 of a person. Unfortunately, the problem got pushed further down the road, which we later addressed in our Civil War, where we yet again endured division. We can always be united by our forefathers' decision to create the great American experiment. And we need to always remember, no matter how divided we are, we can always compromise and defy our division. I think a quote from President Reagan echoes what so many have believed in before and what so many still believe in today. I have no doubt that freedom will prevail.
So the time for contestant number 1.
8 minutes, 47 seconds.
Time for contestant number 1 was 8 minutes, 47 seconds. There will be no time penalty assessed for contestant number 1. So we're going to give the judges some time to tabulate, mark down their scores before we call in contestant number 2. Are our judges ready? Timekeepers ready? All right. With that, we'll have contestant number 2. The title of her oration is The Grand Experiment. Contestant number 2.
George Washington and our founders entrusted us to sustain and maintain an untried and innovative form of government in which the people govern themselves through a representative republic rooted in democracy. It was unheard of. And that's why George Washington called it the grand experiment. But our grand experiment is in danger. And it's in danger, not from outside sources, but from within. Today, I would like to talk to you about 3 points. First, our grand experiment is in danger when citizens and elected officials neglect and reject the foundational principles as outlined in our Constitution. Yet our Constitution is not merely a dusty document talked about in erudite circles. It is the very heart and soul of our nation. So when citizens and elected officials neglect and reject the Constitution, that is the road that leads to ruin. As President Ronald Reagan stated in 1981 in his inaugural address when he quoted Charles de Montesquieu, quote, "The deterioration of every government begins with the decay of the principles upon which it was founded," end quote. And as President Reagan noted, although that was written in 1748, it is just as true today. Yet we have been warned that the dissent from within has the power to tear us apart. We are merely more than 150 years out from our Civil War, when our nation was almost torn in two. And as President Abraham Lincoln said, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. Yet we've seen terrible violence in our nation because of different views. We've seen citizens who have committed this terrible political violence because of people who have different views. Yet being able to have different views is foundational to our nation, and it is outlined in our Constitution. Our Constitution tells us how we make and change laws. Our Constitution tells us how we elect people to speak for us. And our Constitution tells us how our voices can be heard without resorting to blood in our streets. Yet this violence is undeniably prevalent in our country today. We saw citizens who cheered when Charlie Kirk, a fellow American, was assassinated. We saw citizens who said it was a shame when our president wasn't assassinated. And when Melissa Portman, state representative from Minnesota, was assassinated, others callously cheered. Is that who we are, that we cheer for the downfall of fellow Americans? And we have members of Congress who have divided loyalties, the people making decisions for our nation on our behalf. Is that who we are as we the people? Is that what is best for our nation? So I put to you today that at the heart of the strife that threatens us is a dissent from within caused from a lack of common allegiance. So secondly, our nation is protected by allegiance. Yes, words like loyalty, duty, freedom, and liberty do come to play on this issue, but with an emphasis on allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance is said in schools, it's said before nations. It is said by citizens pledging their allegiance to our nation. And many of you have taken an oath of office, an oath of enlistment, or an oath of commissioning, in which you pledge to support and defend the Constitution, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And our members of Congress must also make a similar pledge, because as the people making decisions for our nation, allegiance to America should not be their first, but it should be their only. And in 1969, in a courthouse down in Macon, Georgia, my maternal grandparents took a similar oath when they became naturalized citizens, when they pledged to support and defend the Constitution, to renounce any foreign entity, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Yet it's true, the word allegiance is not in the Constitution, no, but it is thoroughly expressed throughout. For example, in Article 6, it states that state court judges must take an oath to the Constitution, because that is allegiance. And on February 5th, the New York Times released an op-ed stating that we have basic American values, referencing our constitutionally protected 4th and 5th Amendments, because that is allegiance. And in October of 2025, the National Executive Committee of the American Legion released an updated definition for the concept of Americanism. And the new wording underscored, quote, a steadfast and heartfelt devotion to the founding principles, enduring values, and civil responsibilities, end quote. And as the presiding commander, Dan Wiley, said in his commander's message earlier this month, those enduring values include loyalty to the Constitution, because that is allegiance. Yet I put to you today that there's a lot of talk about identity politics, but your most important identity is your identity as an American, not in being black or white, tall or short, Republican or Democrat, but in being an American. And as Dan Wiley also said, quote, Americanism is not what divides us, but what unites us, end quote. And we are united in our allegiance. But that doesn't mean that we must look the same, sound the same, talk the same, or think the same. But it does mean that we must have the same end goal. As we the people, our end goal should be reaping the best outcome for our nation. And this aligns with what President George Washington said in 1789 in his first inaugural address, when he said that the destiny of our nation is, quote, staked on the hands entrusted of the grand experiment to the American people, end quote. So thirdly, we have duties and responsibilities to uphold our grand experiment. But these duties and responsibilities are not vast and grand, they are not glamorous, but they are just as important. We must know our Constitution and the rights protected within it, because you cannot have allegiance to something you are unaware of. We must vote for elected officials who will uphold our Constitution and the values protected within it, because they are the people making decisions for our nation. We must follow the laws, because lawlessness is not allegiance. We must pay our taxes, which go towards funding schools, which go towards funding roads, which go towards funding our national defense, because that is supporting the common defense and promoting the general welfare. And we must work to support our families and work as we are able, instead of relying on the government to protect us. These responsibilities that we have are key to upholding our grand experiment. And it is just as President John F. Kennedy said in 1961, so famously, quote, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, end quote. So I will leave you with this. I am an American citizen, and I pledge my allegiance to my nation and to my Constitution. And I ask that my fellow American citizens do the same. Thank you.
What was the time for contestant number 2?
8 minutes, 44 seconds.
The time for contestant number 2 was 8 minutes and 44 seconds. There will be no time penalty. Again, at this moment, we'll give the judges some time to mark down their scores, and we'll go on to contestant number 3. Timekeepers ready? With that, we'll have contestant number 3. The title of his oration is The Perfection of the Constitution. Contestant number 3.
We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union. The first words of our Constitution, a more perfect union. It doesn't say a perfect union, it says a more perfect union. And in order for our union to become more perfect, the framers of the Constitution allowed for our Constitution to become more perfect. Imperfectly perfect is the best way I can think to describe our Constitution as originally drafted. It was just so perfect for our country, but it still had its shortcomings. Take, for example, a high school student who's just scored a 99 on an extremely challenging exam. Is it a perfect score? No, but it's as close to perfect as it gets. That's a good image of our Constitution. Is it perfect? No, but does this freedom, a voice, a government that isn't tyrannical, and so much more? Yes, it's as close to perfect as it gets. But would you rather have that 99 or the 100? There's still room for improvement, so let's examine 3 key ideas. The first being the importance of making amendments to our Constitution. Next, our rights, duties, and obligations as citizens to help perfect the Constitution through exercising our right to vote. And third, specific instances throughout history that have compelled or forced America to perfect the Constitution. First, why are amendments to our Constitution so important? Because 27 amendments have arisen, providing fundamental duties, rights, and freedoms, and we can see these rights and freedoms saturating our country's history. Dr. Martin Luther King and his I Have a Dream speech, the Civil Rights March in Washington, D.C., the women's suffrage movement, the Asbury Revival in Wilmore, Kentucky, the Watergate scandal. What do all these events have in common? The First Amendment. So why was even just the very First Amendment so important to our country? Because Martin Luther King stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and delivered his I Have a Dream speech. Because of the near 250,000 civil rights supporters who gathered in Washington, D.C. and forever changed the course of our nation, through the 50,000 college students at Asbury College who were able to gather to worship and experience a revival of their faith, for the journalists Bob Woodard and Carl Bernstein, who were able to write and release the information they've been working so diligently to find, leading to the incrimination of President Richard M. Nixon, for the women who were able to speak up and express why their gender does not define who they are or what they can do in our country. Why are amendments so important? Because upon that foundation, the citizens that prayed, united, fought, journaled, and dreamed became the voices that shape our nation, and their determination has paved the way for the growth and unity of the United States of America. But we, as ordinary citizens, also have a role to play in the perfection of the Constitution. The right to vote has been a pivotal freedom that citizens have been able to enjoy in our country, and we have perfected the Constitution by adding the 15th, 19th, 23rd, 24th, and 26th Amendments to expand and protect this right to vote. Because it is so valued in our country, we have a duty and an obligation to our fellow citizens, as well as to our government, to vote. Voting is the people's way of influencing how our government will operate. In the 1964 landmark Supreme Court case of Westbury versus Sanders, Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black, writing for the majority, opined, "No right is more precious in a free state than that of having a choice in the election of those who make the laws, under which, as good citizens, they must live. other rights, even the most basic, are illusory if the right to vote is undermined. Voting not only affects how our Constitution is interpreted, but also how our Constitution is amended as we continually strive to perfect this amazing document. So, we have looked at the importance of making amendments to the Constitution, and we have examined our personal responsibility to help perfect the Constitution through exercising our right to vote. But now, let's look at some specific instances throughout history that have compelled and forced America to perfect the Constitution. We have perfected the Constitution amidst tragedy. President James Garfield was in a coma for 8 days before succumbing to the aftermath of an assassin's bullet. President Woodrow Wilson suffered from a stroke, resulting in a disability for the last 18 months of his term. And still, no provision in the Constitution spoke to this issue. And it all came to a head when the gun was fired. And President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. That is when Congress finally decided to propose the 25th Amendment to address the issue of presidential inability and keep our country protected even in the midst of disaster. Furthermore, we've perfected the Constitution out of necessity. As amazing as the Constitution was at the time, there was no provision for funding our government. However, ratification of the 16th Amendment would allow the federal government to levy an income tax. But to better understand the 16th Amendment, we must take a look back to the 1894 case of Pollock versus Farmers Loan and Trust. Congress tried to implement a 2% income tax on all earnings above $4,000. A 2% income tax. Let's just take a moment. Charles Pollock challenged this tax, and it was brought to the Supreme Court, where they ruled in his favor, striking down the tax as unconstitutional, since it wasn't properly apportioned between the states. And for several years after this, Congress did not try to implement another income tax. No income tax! Let's just take another moment. I hate to ruin the moment for y'all, but in 1909, Congress proposed the 16th Amendment, and in 1913, the amendment was ratified. And ever since then, Congress has continued to levy an income tax, perhaps much to your dismay. But I'm sure you would agree with the sentiments of Arthur Godfrey when he says, "I'm proud to pay taxes in the United States. The only thing is, I can be just as proud for half the money." Perfection is a challenging goal to set for anything. But even if it isn't perfect, the Constitution is still one of the most remarkable written documents. Benjamin Franklin declared these wise words when addressing the delegates at the Constitutional Convention: "I doubt whether any convention we can obtain may be able to make a better Constitution. For when you assemble a number of men to have the advantage of their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all of their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their local interests, and their selfish views. And from such an assembly, can a perfect reduction be expected? It therefore astonishes me, sir, to find this system approaching so near perfection as it does." Benjamin Franklin recognized that the Constitution was an imperfect document. But Benjamin Franklin also recognized that the Constitution was exceedingly closer to perfect than he could have ever imagined. When we fully comprehend how much the Constitution has done for our freedoms in our country, we no longer focus on these minor shortcomings. Instead, we appreciate all of the endless blessings and all of the freedoms that stem from our imperfectly perfect living Constitution. And as we continue to perfect the Constitution, we can step into our futures confident, knowing that the best is yet to come.
what was the time for contestant number 3?
9 minutes and 27 seconds.
The time for contestant number 3 was 9 minutes and 27 seconds. There will be no time penalty assessed. At this moment, we would like to draw our assigned topics. If I could have my mom come up.
Oh, there you go.
This is our assigned topic. All right, timekeeper's ready. Judge is ready. With that, we'll have contestant number 4. The title of his oration is Survival and Liberty. Contestant number 4.
History offers us a brutal lesson. Nations rarely fail for a lack of ideals, but rather for a lack of restraint. From the Roman Empire to the Weimar Republic, nations and peoples have often dreamt big, reaching for the stars, only for it all to come crashing down. Throughout history, almost no nation has successfully been able to achieve the crucial yet evasive balance of both survival and liberty. In 17th century Europe, the continent tore itself apart in the names of faith and morality. The 30 Years' War was one of the largest religious conflicts in human history and was incited by a Protestant Christian dissension against the Catholic Church. The 30 Years' War left 1/3 of the German population dead, and a lesson to the rest of Europe. Good intentions rarely restrain destruction. However, France was uniquely able to benefit from this war. Cardinal Richelieu, the chief statesman of France and a devout Catholic, sided against his religious allies, choosing to put his nation and his people first. This radical act of defiance against the status quo of the times became the first major implementation of raison d'etat, meaning reason of state. The philosophy of raison d'etat espouses that nations should act in accordance with their own best interests, even if that stands in contradiction with private morality. During the 30 Years' War, Cardinal Richelieu did not claim the higher ground, nor did he claim moral superiority. He claimed necessity. And by setting aside his religious and ideological views, Cardinal Richelieu was able to promote stability and empower his nation. Raison d'etat is a key turning point in the history of Europe, giving kings, rulers, and statesmen the justification they needed to act in the best interests of their nation and themselves with contempt for morality. The setting aside of morality and subsequently liberty were the two key vices of this system. Rulers held a strong hand against their subjects, and morality was heavily regulated by the state. Ultimately, it was the suppression of the morality and liberty of the citizenry of Europe that left the continent doomed for more war and destruction. But roughly a century later, a counter-revolution began across the Atlantic Ocean against raison d'etat. In the English colonies of the New World, poor farmers and wealthy merchants alike took up arms against the British Crown. No taxation without representation was far from just a catchy slogan. It was a total rejection of the European system of politics that had favored a strong, centralized authority acting on behalf of the state. Instead, what the early American colonists were proposing was truly revolutionary. A nation whose ideals were defined and restrained by its citizens. In its essence, the American system delegated state power to the people. However, delegating state power to the people is not always a foolproof plan. The first French Republic, founded in 1789 by French revolutionaries, collapsed in a short 6 years due to the revolution's insistence upon moral absolutism as its key guiding light. In the absence of stable institutions and civic restraint, moral aspirations became a weapon rather than a guide. Compromise was corruption, and disagreement was treason. The survival instinct of raison d'etat was completely and utterly abandoned. During the ensuing reign of terror, thousands of French citizens were executed, not merely for their crimes, but for failing to live up to the moral ideals of the revolution. Justice became a weapon, and fear replaced liberty. Ultimately, liberty was ushered out and replaced by order under Napoleon Bonaparte, ending the French Revolution's dabbling in liberty and ending the experimental French Republic. The French Revolution now lives as a ghastly reminder that liberty, without restraint, collapses under the weight of its own ambition. So why did the American Revolution succeed where the French Revolution came up short? The American Revolution was primarily fought to transfer power to pre-existing institutions, while the French Revolution was fought to reinvent the wheel and upend those inherited social structures. The Americans fought to preserve a way of life they already largely had, while the French fought to upheave everything they had inherited from their predecessors. Liberty without restraint collapses into terror. So from France, the world has been taught two key lessons: that survival without liberty, or raison d'etat, is not worth preserving, but also that liberty without order could not survive. The Constitution of the United States of America was ingeniously designed to solve both of these problems by balancing both liberty and survival in a way never before managed by any other nation. But it does so by relying upon ordinary Americans to do both their part and their duty to their nation. The Constitution of the United States of America isn't about rights. It's about responsibilities. Before the Constitution protected a single liberty, it created a legislature with both limits and accountability. Our founding fathers knew that self-government requires civic discipline and a duty-oriented citizenry. The Constitution also requires us to obey the law, pay taxes, serve on juries, and defend the nation when called. Our forefathers knew that a republic cannot be defended by mere parchment alone or vague, ambitious ideals. They knew it has to be defended by the character of its people. And as stewards of the flame of American liberty, it is our job to protect and preserve this rare gift which we have inherited. I believe Thomas Jefferson said it best when he said the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. That is the duty entrusted to us by our forefathers. The highest calling of the Constitution is this: that in order to preserve both liberty and survival, we must always do our duty. Thank you.
What was the time for contestant number 4?
9 minutes and 21 seconds.
The time for contestant number 4 was 9 minutes and 21 seconds. There will be no time calling. past 5 minutes, contestant number 1 has been preparing for the assigned topic. The assigned topic for today is Article 4, Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive, for the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. Contestant number 1.
Article 4, Section 4. We call this part of the U.S. Constitution the Guarantee Clause. It makes 3 essential promises to the security of the nation. The first one is it guarantees every state a Republican form of government. Now, in this context, Republican does not refer to the political party. It simply means a self-representative form of government, where the people elect representatives who vote on laws, policies, and ideas that best represent them. The guarantee clause also makes a second guarantee. This one guarantees protection from foreign invasion. That might seem like something simple today, something you would gloss over if you were reading this passage. But at the time the Constitution was written, that was a great commitment to make. We were surrounded by European empires across the Atlantic and even on our own continent. Canada was British. The Louisiana Territory belonged to France. Across the water, there were strong empires like the Spanish, Portuguese, the Russians, the Prussians. We had to ensure that no state would face an enemy alone. We understood the way we won our revolution was thanks to the unison of all 13 colonies, not just 1 or 2. That's why this part of the clause is there. It's there to ensure the nation remain united when they were facing an enemy. The third part of the guarantee clause is the guarantee from domestic uprising or civil unrest. As it says in the passage, this is usually done at the request of the state legislature or the government. Today, this might not be used very often, but it has been referenced in many times throughout our history, more so than now in the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement was the time when it was used a lot. After our Civil War, the South had to be slowly reintroduced to the Union. They were rebellious. This was a time when this clause could be seen. Another time you could mention, if it was around, would have been Shays' Rebellion. That would have been the time of domestic uprising. In summary, although Article 4, Section 4 isn't one of the most grand or glamorous parts of our Constitution, it's still important. The 3 promises it makes are still essential to the national security of the nation. And we always need to remember that the most boring or not entertaining parts of the Constitution are some of the most essential.
What was the time for contestant number 1?
3 minutes, 8 seconds.
The time for contestant number 1 was 3 minutes and 8 seconds. There will be no time penalty assessed. 2 will now present her assigned topic speech.
Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution protects for 3 things. First, it guarantees a republic form of government. Second, it protects against invasions. And third, it protects, upon request, against domestic violence. But what do these mean? First, it guarantees a republic form of government. Hence the nickname, the Guarantee Clause. This clause is nicknamed the Guarantee Clause simply because of that. Yet, founding era dictionaries define republic as a government given to the hands of the people. We are given that protection as a government given to the hands of the people, since that is the basis upon which our nation was founded. And this provision is explicitly written in our Constitution to protect our people and to protect them in that way. This provision is written into our Constitution so that no one can go in and change a state's form of government into any other kind, such as a monarchy, such as any other kind that protects from it. Now, secondly, it protects against invasion. We are not small individual sovereign states, but rather one large unified nation, the United States of America. Therefore, the government protects all states against invasion, rather than letting it fall to any individual state on themselves. And in fact, the flawed Articles of Confederation had a similar clause requiring all states to gather together to protect each other for the common defense. Even our Articles of Confederation had that clause, and so does our Constitution. And thirdly, upon request, our states are protected against domestic violence. Now, this is an interesting section, that it says upon request. The federal government cannot just go into a state to protect against domestic violence. It is only if that state's legislature requests for the federal government to intervene, or in the provision that the federal government cannot ask the legislature due to the violence, that the executive branch of that state can request the federal government to intervene. And this was supported by George Mason of Virginia, who supported being able to have a federal response if necessary. Interesting enough, this article of the Constitution has rarely gone to court. It has rarely reached the level of the Supreme Court, because it specifically gives power to the federal government. In the few times that it has made it to the Supreme Court has given answers of such, saying that they cannot rule on it because they do not have the jurisdiction, and that it is explicitly clear what the article says in and of itself. And these basic protections have shaped the country that we have today, whether we realize it or not. Thank you.
What was the time for contestant number 2?
3 minutes and 30 seconds.
The time for contestant number 2 was 3 minutes and 30 seconds. There will be no time penalty. We will now have contestant number 2 present his assigned topic, oration.
Picture yourself standing in the middle of New York City, gazing up at a stunning architectural showcase. The sunlight gleams down on those Art Deco walls, and the tower seems to stretch all the way to the clouds. This exterior beauty is so captivating that many forget to ask, how can the Empire State Building stand so dignified? Here's why. The real strength is not found on the exterior, but rather hidden inside the walls. Within this structure lies a 60,000-ton steel frame, a massive skeleton that provides support to the entire structure. That steel frame is what allows the Empire State Building to stand with such strength, beauty, and grandeur. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution likewise serves as that hidden steel frame for our country. Although it may not be the most well-known article, it nonetheless provides fundamental and integral support to our nation. Let's examine the structural integrity of Article 4, Section 4, which provides for a Republican form of government, protects against foreign invasion, and safeguards against domestic violence. First, the Guarantee Clause ensures that each state within the Union maintains a Republican form of government. In context, the word Republican does not refer to any political proclivity, but rather a government that is run by the people who elect representatives to act on their behalf, as evidenced by our electoral process. In the 1849 case of Luther v. Borden, the Supreme Court ruled that determining what constitutes a Republican form of government is a, quote, political question that is better left to Congress or the President rather than the judiciary. Having a Republican form of government promotes popular sovereignty, where power is vested in the people. Next, the Guarantee Clause protects against foreign invasion. As a result, this clause gained significantly more attention during wars, such as the War of 1812 and the Cold War. It establishes a strong national defense of our nation against those who may try to attack and even take control over our nation. During the War of 1812, this clause became especially important as British forces entered into American territory and began to attack major cities, showing the need for a strong, unified defense rather than relying on the individual states. This clause reinforces the federal government's responsibility to protect the smaller states when being threatened by foreign enemies. Lastly, the Guarantee Clause safeguards against domestic violence. However, it balances this by saying, on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened. This clause strikes a balance between state sovereignty and federal assistance in the event of a crisis, such as a riot or an insurrection. This clause became especially important during the Civil Rights Movement, when southern states such as Alabama and Mississippi resisted desegregation. Both presidents, Dwight D. Eisenhower and President John F. Kennedy, were compelled to utilize their federal authority to enforce civil rights laws during this time. In conclusion, Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution ensures a significant degree of our national defense, while also striking a balance between state sovereignty and federal assistance. This generally unfamiliar, yet fundamental, structural clause provides for a Republican form of government, protects against foreign invasion, and safeguards against domestic violence. Just like the Empire State Building wouldn't quite stand so firm and dignified if it were for its massive steel frame, our country wouldn't quite stand so firm if it weren't for the silent strength of Article 4, Section 4.
What was the time for contestant number 3?
4 minutes, 13 seconds.
The time for contestant number 3 was 4 minutes and 13 seconds. There will be no time held. is assigned topic oration.
Our nation is not merely one federal conglomerate, but many states joined together in a union. And as a part of this, one of the most pertinent and important parts of our Constitution is the promises made by the federal government to these United States and the duties the states reciprocally have to the federal government. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States of America is possibly one of the most pertinent and applicable today aspects of the promises made by the federal government to these states. In this component of the Constitution, the federal government promises to protect each and every state, but also to ensure in each and every state not just any form of government, but a Republican form of government. Today, now more than ever, we hear in the news the word democracy thrown haphazardly around as it relates to our government here in the United States. But in the Constitution, it is not democracy that we find promised to the states, but a Republican form of government. And this reflects the wisdom and prudence of our founding fathers, who observed the world around them when they sat down to draft the Constitution, and they saw what had happened to once great nations who allowed the mobs to rule freely and liberally without restraint. The Constitution in and of itself is a document that reflects the Republican nature of our government, as 51% votes are not enough to alter it. There are checks, balances, and hurdles intentionally set high that make it hard to alter the Constitution. The rights of Americans should not end where 51% of people deem that they should. Just because 51% of people, or any simple majority, thinks you shouldn't be able to say what's on your mind, does not mean you shouldn't. The First Amendment does not stop where 51% of people say it does. The Second Amendment does not stop. It doesn't end when 51% of people don't agree with it. Our founding fathers knew that this was necessary, that sometimes the majority of people would take offense to our government and the laws and what we did, but that if we allowed the majority to dictate, we would have guillotines as they did in France. They understood that wisdom comes from temperament. It comes from taking time to change things and allowing the test of history and what we've learned from experience to continue, even when people's minds are swiftly changed in the moment by what they see on TV or their phone. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution should remind us today that we shouldn't bow the knee to the 51% and give up what the founding fathers fought to give us. Not a tyrannical, mob-ruled democracy, but a wise, prudent, and tempered republic for these United States. Thank you.
What was the time for contestant number 4?
4 minutes and 0 seconds.
Got it. Time for contestant number 4 was 4 minutes and 0 seconds. With that, that concludes our competition portion of the contest. We will ask the judges and the tabulators to retire directly to the tabulation room for the time. We will take a 30-minute recess. We will ask everyone to be back on their seats in 30 minutes. Thank you.
sat there way too long.
Yeah. Hey, cut it. Cut it. Leave it on. 30 minutes.
Yeah, I guess we can just cut it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And we'll restart later again.